And joining us now is Minnesota Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar. Senator, it's always great to have you. Good to see you this morning or this afternoon as well. You've been campaigning through the blue wall states. Tell me what you heard from voters and what is striking you about the mood of today so far on Election Day.
I've been in Allegheny County right there just a few days ago, and I've been in Wisconsin yesterday with Tim Walz. And I can say that Kamala's closing argument, really her whole campaign, has been about optimism, unity, and joy. And what we see on the other side with Donald Trump is that he's spiraling down. And for good reason, that scares people. They don't want the chaos. The fact that he's claiming of the last day he wants to reach out to women, and then he calls a woman leader the B word in the same day. The fact that he ended somehow, I noted the voter that you just had on who was talking about who he didn't want Donald Trump to bring in. He's actually thinking, this is a former Trump voter, he is thinking about the economy and what would be like to have these people in charge. And he brought up the thing that I found hilarious was the Kennedy argument. And he didn't want that guy in there. Well, they just said they wanted to get fluoride out of drinking water. So I guess they are ending with the more cavities argument. This has just been a mess, and it has reminded people of why they had supported Joe Biden, yes, but more likely why they want to have a future and they want to go forward positively. And that includes the Senate races for Bob Casey and Tammy Baldwin and Sherrod Brown and Alyssa Slotkin, and then out to Jackie Rosen and Ruben Gallego, John Tester, Texas, Florida. I mean, I've just seen a groundswell. And what Messina was talking about, those numbers of people turning out, it's extraordinary. 100,000 doors in one morning, 3 million over the weekend, and that 100,000 was just Philly. That ground game matters because they can't believe half of what they're seeing on the internet for good reason. So the ground game and the door-to-door and person-to-person is going to tip this, and I'm telling you she's going to win.
Even if it tips it, and you know this very well because you had a campaign, you know what a ground game looks like, right? If it is, as Jim says...
Well, Minnesota has the highest voter turnout in the country, so yes, we believe in a ground game.
If it can make a difference for half a point or a point, from what you're sensing on the ground, is that enough? What are you seeing? What are you hearing that maybe you didn't think about before you went out and went to these blue wall states?
So the first thing you're hearing, which a lot of people know, is just these women, and they come up to me. These are not at campaign events, okay? These are in a diner in Wisconsin in a red area. They come up, and we've seen this in the 22 election, so I have proof points in places like Nevada where women were not saying, some of these women, how they were going to vote. That's why you see the Post-it notes in the bathrooms. That's why Liz Cheney is telling people in Kamala's big coalition that, hey, you vote the way you want to. And if you care about freedom, you vote for Kamala Harris. The second group, business people who actually are never going to tell a pollster what they're doing, but they have told me they don't want to see the chaos in the economy, and they don't like the $4,000 tax per family with the all-out tariff. The final group, which is pretty obvious, and this is a lot of men that come up to me on this because they know who I am and they say, I'm a conservative, I voted for John McCain, I voted for George Bush, but I want to protect our democracy and I'm going for Harris. So, or they say, I'm not voting for Trump, is what they tend to say. So I just think there's something going on here. People can point at the Iowa poll. Maybe it was an aberration. I don't think it was. I think that there are just a lot of people out there that probably in these swing states with all the ads and everything going on, they're not always answering all the polls. And even then, it shows that she's doing well. You add that to the ground game, and that's why I think as long as people vote, as long as they remember all this punditry, all these polls, none of this matter unless they pull themselves to the polls and are willing, maybe even tonight, stand in some lines. They stand in line for coffee. This is your entire future and the future of America.
And speaking about the future of America, you've been chair of the Rules Committee. You know what it feels like to be in the majority, even with the slimmest of majorities. And you've been on Judiciary, and you know what that confirmation process has been, particularly for Supreme Court candidates, nominees. So let's talk about the Senate. You just referred to some of your incumbents, and it's a tough this year for Democrats, the toughest possible map. You can't lose more than one unless you pick up somebody. And you've got Tester in a really tight race, Sherrod Brown in Ohio in a semi-tight race. West Virginia's gone. If you lose Tester, where do you see a pickup? Are you counting on Texas if you hold everything else? How do you see the possibility, rather than probability, but even the possibility of holding the Senate for Democrats?
I think it's there because I know these people, and they are as we say in Minnesota, our North Star. They're people that voters trust. So time and time again, you see Jon Tester defying the odds, as well as these other candidates I mentioned. They defy the odds. They get Republican voters all the time, year after year, because they do their jobs and they look out for their constituents, and they know them, and they may not agree with every single thing they says. So I would never count out Jon Tester. You add to his ability to reach out to people as he has, and there have been polls up and down in that race, and it's a small state, so it's harder to figure out. Big state geographically, small state with number of voters. But the second piece of it is just this turnout of the people I'm talking about here, of women voters in such large numbers who are also going to tend to vote for freedom when it comes to the Senate races in a big, big way. They have stood up in 2022, which, no one believed that we would have been able to add a seat to the Senate, which we did. And I predict they're going to do it again, Andrea.